Hello, fellow Substackers. This is Hugh Smiley, and I'm so happy that you have joined us this evening or today, wherever you might be. And this is a series of, I call them authentic dialogues or conversations, but you could call it an interview. And I'm really especially happy to welcome today Jenny Kellogg from Washington, D.C. And Jenny and I have been involved for a while in putting together a book, and which is almost ready to be published. And Jenny is a reader of the Akashic record, an astrologer, esoteric astrologer to some extent, and a lover of Greek mythology, and with a specialty in the centaurs. And so, Jenny, welcome here to the Substack channel.
Thank you, Hugh. It's my honor and joy to be here with you.
Right. So I'm really impressed with what I've seen of your work, and you seem to have a great sensitivity and sensibility, and in kind of reading reality.
Mhm.
That's what Baha'is call it, reading reality, and then translating that into a language that helps people understand, a language which is sort of at the same time um deep
Mhm.
but also accessible
Mhm.
without a lot of jargon and technical terms. So it's a real talent, to be able to combine the perception, deep perception, and then that ability to give out, to teach, or to share what you perceive on subtle planes as well as the obvious, and kind of translating the obvious into the subtle, and vice versa.
Mhm.
So probably our conversation today may give the viewers and listeners a chance to experience that a little bit too, just by the sound of
Mhm.
your voice and your body
Mhm.
language and what you say, the questions I might ask. So usually we just sort of wing it, especially since we do have some common ground, and I don't really have an agenda of questions, but perhaps you could just let people know a little bit about who you are, and fill in a couple of blanks that I may have missed in describing you.
Sure. Thank you, Hugh. Thank you for that perceptive and generous introduction. I'm Jenny Kellogg. I'm here in Washington, D.C., and I call myself a spiritual coach because I don't really have another word for it. In another place and time, I would probably be a priest or a priestess, but today we call it spiritual coaching. My first career was in Greece and in Greek culture and literature, and I have a PhD in Greek literature. I have a book that came out last year, which is translations of Greece's first Nobel Prize winning poet. His name was George Seferes, and this is his only previously untranslated work from Greek to English that I brought out. And that's been an amazing joy to have that in the world and to have that recognition. And another name for myself might be a mystic. I'm a longtime meditator. I'm a disciple of Paramahansa Yogananda. And I came to what I do now from, as you say, just kind of, going deeper and deeper into my own spiritual path and meditating and having a lot of spiritual phenomena, inner perception in that journey, and not being content to just let it be that, but wanting to do something with that spiritual phenomena, share it, communicate. And so over time, I've become more and more comfortable with being something of a channel. And so the way that I do that is through the practice of the Akashic records. And I've been working in the records since 2019 and seeing clients accessing their personal soul databases since 2020. And now I teach the Akashic records. I have an online course that you can access at akashictraining.com. to learn to access your personal Akashic records in an audio course. And then I teach live a course called the Akashic Records of Things, which is about accessing the energetic field or the spiritual consciousness for what we perceive to be the inanimate world. And what can we learn from that experience? And then I also teach people how to access others' Akashic records and become a facilitator. Um, and something else I do that I'm sure we're going to get into is I also teach the Rainbow Bridge meditation, which is part of the Ageless Wisdom teachings and the tradition of Alice A. Bailey.
Well, first of all, congratulations for being able to integrate, I guess. I'm sure you do. You
Mhm.
synthesize to some extent all those different uh, threads in an artful way. And
Mhm.
congratulations also for winning that award. And I'm sure there are people who are fans of that Greek. What's Seferes is his name?
Seferes, yeah.
Seferes, who
Uh-huh.
must be just so happy to with your publication, right?
Yeah, it's
You
been a
have some
wonderful
fans of your own
honor.
now.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, a joy, really.
Do you
Mhm.
speak Greek or read it
Yes,
fluently?
I'm fluent in modern Greek.
Yeah.
I have my undergraduate degree was in ancient Latin and Greek,
Okay.
and I began speaking modern Greek when I went for my junior year abroad in Athens in the 90s.
Well, I find that when someone has a cross-cultural connection, sometimes it comes through a dream or a vacation, even. It begins with
Mm-hmm.
that, or a relationship,
Hmm.
partnership of some kind. But when that relationship or the identification with the other culture or history grows, it just gets so rich. And it seems to take on, with a foreigner, it takes on a special allure, I think, because someone who's born in a culture, there's so much we take for granted.
Yeah.
Like I remember when I was studying, teaching some flamenco in Spain, and it's so exotic, the passion and the music. But some of the flamenco artists, they said, well, we find that the blues, for example, from North America
Hmm.
is so exotic, and we all are trying to learn the rhythms to sing the blues, just like you Westerners or North Americans are trying to learn flamenco. So it's interesting to watch that passion that you have, which may have been an obsession even at times,
Oh, yes.
with Greece and
Yeah.
history
And
and
with this poet, that's what I say.
yeah.
The two men I know the best in my life are my husband and this dead Greek poet.
Wow.
You know?
Your husband doesn't get jealous. Well,
No.
since there's no time really, Akashic
Yeah.
records,
It's true.
who knows what goes on in the Akashic records?
Right?
So, so explain to us, if you would. I'm not
Hmm.
totally conversant with it myself. I have a sense, but just tell us a bit about the Akashic record and
Hmm.
what is it, and
Hmm.
how do we fit into it?
So the Akashic records are the energetic database of your soul and all of the experiences it has had since it perceived itself as separate from source or separate from the divine, from the one. And that database exists so that we can learn from it as we take various forms, as we evolve and grow. It's there not just simply to record all of the information, like what did you have for breakfast this morning? Only what you had for breakfast this morning would only be there if something significant happened and you needed to, review and learn
Uh,
from it.
Significant in regard to.
To whatever you are currently experiencing in your consciousness as
Oh,
you.
okay. Okay.
And so it's a kind of neutral database
Hmm.
that contains the distilled wisdom of you, your experiences. And it also, kind of contains the record and distilled wisdom of this experiment in creation. There is an Akashic record, I think, for everything, but what we can do and how we can access that information with our limited human brains is somewhat limited. So, it's not like querying a database at Google or the library or something where you'll instantly get the exact information.
Right.
It's really dependent on the user, their vibration, their intention, who they are, and what would be in their highest good to receive or know or
Right.
understand.
Interesting. So there's a kind of an attunement with the current time and the
Yes.
conditions and needs of the current time, the consciousness
Yes.
of the individual. So, for example, we hear about supposedly just before we die, our whole life goes in front of us,
Hmm.
and we hear that from different cultures. So it seems
Hmm.
to be a thing. So that the obviously, if we were just it was just lasting a few seconds or minutes, maybe at the most, there wouldn't be every little detail, like what kind of socks we bought at the store, you know.
Hmm.
But what would be, do you feel, those things that would come to our attention as our previous life runs before our eyes before we make that transition into the next level?
Well, from what I have read, and I'm definitely not an expert in this subject, well, and the teachings of like my yoga lineage, I would say we leave the body in the way that we came in. And so um, our teachings say that we come in through the medulla oblongata and then kind of down into the chakras or the energy centers. So I think that when we pass first, we go out that same way. And I think that there's a kind of emotional review first. My sense is that as you depart, and I can't really say if this is true for everyone, depending on the circumstances that you pass. But let's say an ideal passing,
Okay.
that you would, kind of get a sense of the way that you made other people feel and the impact, positive and negative, that you had on others and the world. However, I also think that once you've made the transition, you've gone through the Bardo realms or whatever your tradition says, you've made the transition and you've gone through these Bardo realms, then I believe that our memories and our experiences are still there, like the Akashic records, that you can review them. It's not like you get like one time to kind of perceive. It's always there, and I think it's probably quite a lot easier to learn from these experiences or perceive them when you're not in the body. The challenge, though, is in order to like really work through these lessons and evolve, you do need a body. So it's a kind of double bind. Like you can see what they all are, but
Yeah.
you don't it's harder to work on them when you're not in matter.
No, I get that. I think it's this is the great bounty of having a body
Hmm.
is and so often in certain religious orientations, the body or the somatic plane is diminished or
Yeah.
made to be dirty even or irrelevant or it's all
Yes.
about up in the mind. So I've always been not always I don't have any earth in my chart, my astrology
Me
chart.
neither.
Oh, is that right? Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Earthless.
Yeah.
I'm like a spirit looking to get landed and grounded. So
Yep.
I think maybe because of that I have sought out the form of psychotherapy that I studied. Hakomi is somatic. The Tibetan Buddhist Tibetan what is somatic breathing meditation and other things as well that are somatic. So the body really is, in a way, the cells, even an
Hmm.
individual cell, it's like the whole universe in the
Yes.
cell, in the body. So even if we don't have the maturity, perhaps, or the spiritual consciousness to digest it, to fully flesh it out or
Hmm.
understand it, even on a mental or spiritual plane, but by planting the seed of a teaching or a principle,
Hmm.
and doing our best to fertilize it a little bit, then it starts to grow. So that then when we do make the transition to the next level or life or whatever it is, it's there to grow robustly.
Yes.
Something like that.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
exactly.
Yeah.
Hmm.
So how do you get ready to read the Akashic record of somebody? Do you have a little ritual or a prayer or breathing
Yes.
technique? Or,
Well, first, as a practitioner, we need to prepare ourselves, and I think that's up to the person.
yeah,
For me, it's about focusing my intention to be a pure channel and, making sure that I feel that I am personally as clear as I can be on that day, which, of course, as we know, having a body is changes from day to day. And one way I do that are the rainbow bridge techniques, which I can talk about in a moment. But then also, it's important to be in a state of kind of clean slate between you and the other person and the client. So we have a process, very simple forgiveness prayer that we read before, working in someone's records.
yeah.
And then when I'm with a client, before we access their records, we meditate together and do something that we call heart integration and creating the heart light circle. Because the method of accessing the records that I use works with the toroid field of the heart. And, really, we expand that field. We place ourselves in direct union or relationship with the divine, create a sacred space. It's kind of like sitting down with the divine around a campfire or something like that. And then only then do we access the records.
Okay, so there's a preparation and an environment is created wherein you can be a pure vehicle,
Hmm.
and also the client, I guess you'd call them, can also clear themselves to receive.
Exactly.
So there's each you and the client, and then there's the relationship itself, like a third entity, you might say, which is also
Yes.
protected or purified through the intention and the prayer. Nice. Mhm.
Yes. Hmm.
Well, I love that. Like respecting everything we do, let alone every person we meet, and um, that idea that everything is a teacher and everything deserves a little bit of mindful attention,
Hmm.
gratitude, perhaps sometimes, or mm. So the Rainbow Bridge or the Antahkarana, as it's
Hmm.
mentioned in some esoteric traditions, can you tell us a bit about that?
Yes, and I'll just speak from my perspective. I'm not really a long time student of the ageless wisdom traditions, but I love the Rainbow Bridge technique, and I came to it through my own Akashic records. That when I learned to access my records, one of the first things I heard over and over again in my mind's ear, so to speak, was the phrase rainbow bridge over and over again. Open the rainbow bridge, access the rainbow bridge. And I didn't know what it was. I would meditate and I'd envision these bridges coming out of my third eye or like walking across a bridge made of rainbows. And I'd say, am I doing it now? And I knew, no, I'm not. And so it took about a year. I called friends, I asked around, has anyone heard of this thing? No one. And so after hearing this phrase for about a year, I happened to, I think, get a notice of a lecture by the astrologer Dr. Ron Tiggle.
Oh yes.
And
Yeah.
it said in his bio that he was a longtime practitioner of the Rainbow Bridge meditation technique. And when I read that, it was like this feeling washed over me. And I was like, this is that thing,
Mm.
my soul keeps talking about.
Wow, that must have been an exciting time, right?
Yeah, it was awesome. It was amazing. And so Dr. Tiggle has a website. It's called soul1.org.
Right.
And it has a lot of free information about the Rainbow Bridge, but it mentions my teacher. Her name is Chloe Folan. She's an Irish, well, she lives in Ireland. And she is pretty much one of the only teachers around, aside from us, who are her students kind of carrying on the tradition of the people who created the Rainbow Bridge, Josephine and Norman Stevens. So I began studying with her, and everything that I've learned really comes from her. But I'll say what the technique is in my language,
Great.
which is it's a method to bring the energy of your soul down into this physical body and to widen, clear, and expand what they call the central channel, but people might know of as their sushumna, their light spine, their astral spine, the pranic tube. And this is the central linking mechanism between what you might call our higher selves and our lower selves. And for most of us, that central channel is quite thin and clogged with the energy of condensed thought forms from this life, past lives, from the environment. And the chakras or energy centers that run along this central channel are also kind of clogged, loaded, as they say in the language of Rainbow Bridge.
Okay.
And so this technique works with something called your soul star energy center, which is a ball of light 6 inches above your head and is part of your soul put down into matter. And it uses it as a cleaning tool to gradually lighten the burden on your energy body of these denser, heavier energies.
Before you go on, and before I
Yeah.
forget, the when you said dense thoughts
Hmm.
from this life or previous or whatever, why how are thoughts dense, and why does that cause heaviness or obstruction? I mean, what's wrong with thoughts? Isn't that pretty amazing?
Well, as you know, Hugh, most of us tend to have quite a negative opinion of
Oh,
ourselves,
okay, yeah,
and that we have thoughts that are based in a misperception of reality, perceiving ourselves as flawed, less than,
okay,
or you know,
lacking or
yeah, lacking.
mhm,
And so these thoughts are related to sometimes difficult experiences that we've had, ancestral patterns.
right?
And so this is material that clouds our perception,
Okay. So not
of
all thoughts,
ourselves.
but the thoughts that are related to limiting or negative beliefs, psychological beliefs, or those are
Hmm.
the ones that get in the way and need to be
Hmm.
doing
Yes.
flushed out or whatever. Okay, great. Just wanted to
Yeah.
clarify that. Yeah. So good thoughts, I mean, thoughts like love and connectedness and whatever might be considered positive. They're not a problem
Um,
because sometimes, excuse me, just
yeah.
the Buddhists they talk about karma, right?
Hmm.
So they say actually the ideal is to become free from all karma, not just negative karma, but positive karma too. Keeps us attached. It keeps us from being totally free. So I'm just wondering if the thoughts that are within our energy system, if the positive thoughts of love and purity and justice and power and all those kinds of things and feeling good about ourselves and other people, if those are also getting in the way just because they're thoughts, mental matter.
Um, Probably to a certain extent, yes.
Hmm.
But it's about the vibration of the thoughts.
Mm.
And so it depends on how you feel. If you think a positive thought and that lifts your vibration, and then you're more able to access a state without thoughts, then I would say that's a
Okay.
positive outcome.
Okay. So it's relative, yeah.
You know, um, what Paramahansa Yogananda says is that thoughts are universally and not individually rooted. So the thoughts we go towards are part of our vibration or our kind of habit of perception.
Yeah.
And what this technique does is help to lighten the burden of thoughts that take us downward.
Yeah.
But it has another benefit too, which is that when you widen the central channel using the soul star technique, then your Kundalini energy or your, innate spiritual energy that wants to be lifted can do so gradually and naturally because there's less obstructions in its way.
Right. Yeah, yeah, yeah. I was reading something recently about the energy coming down sort of into the body, into the consciousness and the energy or subtle body, but also our that beautiful grounded energy from our root
Hmm.
chakra and so
Hmm.
wanting to be able to be liberated to come up so that like the
Exactly.
Kundalini. So if we clear the channel, then both of those can take place at the same time. And the heaven can kiss the earth or vice versa. Like the
Exactly.
centaurs, right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. Yes. Yes. And so the goal is to gradually clear out your energy centers from the head down to below the feet to what they call the Earth Star chakra, which is 6 inches below the feet and kind of merged with the planetary being of the Earth.
The planetary being of the Earth. Wow. Can you tell us more about that? Is there anything?
Oh, I know that the Bailey books and others have a lot of teachings, but I'm just going to say it from my
Sure,
perspective,
of course, yeah.
which is that I mean, my sense is that the earth is a deity, is a kind of living being that also needs to go through her own process of Kundalini awakening, and that happens in cycles, the cycles of the ages. And that when, we're at like a higher age and man is more enlightened on the earth, it's also because the earth has been able to awaken her own Kundalini. And I'm sure that there's probably a process of where the earth is one of the chakra centers of our solar system. And, I think that there's a kind of resonance with the way our energy bodies are structured and what happens for the earth. And so, if that's an idea that resonates with you or your listeners, I think that can be a powerful motivator for doing the Rainbow Bridge practices and coming into right relationship with the earth.
That
And
whole kind of eco-spiritualism and Gaia
exactly.
being more than just a collection of different, the mineral kingdom, vegetable kingdom, et
Right.
cetera, stratosphere, but it's a being, some
Hmm.
conscious being, maybe. Yeah, I love that too, and that the other planets too, Uranus, and Venus, and Mars are all like chakras in the solar system body and
Exactly.
having relationships and sending energy back and forth. So by doing the Rainbow Bridge practice,
Hmm.
then we're actually not only helping ourselves, but we're helping the earth, and through that, in turn, helping all humanity. So the more people that do this kind of practice, there may be different variations, then
Yes.
it's like we're all doing it together for the earth and ourselves, humanity.
Yes. And one of the things that was practiced regularly back in the day when the Rainbow Bridge meditation was first brought out in the 70s and 80s was physical practice of a group where you create a group soul. So everybody links their soul stars and then creates a group soul star that you can feel and a group central channel when you're all together and you all consciously visualize and feel moving that soul star down and up into the earth. And so it magnifies and amplifies that process of coming together to support the
So I'm going
earth.
to make a little bit of a leap, but
Hmm.
using this as an example, you live in Washington, D.C., the country where the term the rugged individualist came into
Yes.
being, right? Which
Yes.
as a, adulated principle, rugged individualist. Um, However, it seems that it didn't work too well. I mean, up to
No,
a
I agree
point,
with you.
up to a point.
Yeah.
For a few of those rugged individuals, they managed to accumulate some wealth or whatever.
Right.
However, in the Baha'i teachings, it says, Baha'u'llah says, this is the age that we're entering now, this new Sat Yuga
Hmm.
of the group work. And so in the Baha'i faith, for
Hmm.
example, there are no individuals who have any authority over others.
Yep.
However, there are institutions of 9 members that are elected democratically
Mm-hmm.
who manage things. So this idea of this is 11th house also in astrology of organizations and
Hmm.
fellowships and brotherhoods and sisterhoods and so on. Um, So what's going on in the United States right now, one might say, is like the breakdown of that kind of mentality, that super macho,
Yes,
patriarchal, rugged individualist, and it's peaking.
correct.
Speaking, and we're saying, "Wow, look at that!" You know,
Hmm.
unabashed, naked. This is what we've sort of been
Hmm.
uh, moving towards. And so, do you have any thoughts or impressions about how those who are like yourself, and I would include myself in your company and many others that I know, who are rooting for something new and better and grassroots, but at the same time connected with divine? How do you see that extreme of the rugged individuals, the patriarchy,
Hmm.
and what could emerge coming, especially in your country, the United States, which is kind of the extreme example of this, even though it's
Yeah,
a
I agree.
world phenomenon. It's not just in
Hmm.
the U.S., but it's sort of the U.S. is out front. If it's a race, you might say
Hmm.
it's a big question. It's sort of multifaceted, but I'm sure you have some.
Well, I've been thinking about this a little bit more lately because I live in Washington, D.C., not just
Right.
because Trump is here,
Mhm.
but because I'm a longtime community member here. And one of the reasons I like living here is that the people who come to work in the federal government and all of the agencies and various, activities and arms of our government are really mission-driven people. And it's a wonderful place to live with people who are intellectually curious and engaged. And so that has now been completely massacred by by our government, and it's a great tragedy. And everyone I know is completely reeling. I mean, one of my clients said to me a few months ago, "It's like everybody I know was gunned down with a machine gun."
Oh,
And so I have been reflecting on that, and there are days where I feel that the collective sadness is kind of paralyzing. It's, hard to function. But what I've felt is that if we don't successfully process our trauma and really make space for people to grieve the lives that they had, the agency that they lost in terms of being able to contribute to the world, and the sense of satisfaction, that's where that's where the rugged individualism, will kind of have its shadow side and triumph. And so, what I've been doing is the last couple of weeks, I've been hosting job loss circles for federal government workers and people just even in my apartment building here with a neighbor of mine who's a job loss coach. And I have just a very simple message, which is it's okay to be devastated, to be grieving, to be scared and sad, but that we need to also take the good things about whatever you were doing in the world. And it could be very confusing and disorienting for a long time, but we can't give up on that. And we have to use those skills and try to come together in a different way. And I'm not an activist or like a movement organizer or anything like that. Just out here saying like, let's stay connected. And the connection, like what I was saying earlier, creating the group soul, that's a wordless endeavor. We're not talking while we're creating the group soul. We're just feeling, intuiting, and moving together and connecting. And so,
on a
my,
more of a subjective level, really.
yeah. And so there's a lot of work that's going to be done. I think that we're moving into an age of terrible chaos in the terms of just like, what happens when institutions that we relied on in the ways that our lives were ordered falls apart. But at the same time, I think that we have to just really remember our internal values and our internal compass, even when it feels like we don't have shared values.
I love that, and in a way, it is a kind of an activism, gentle, by bringing the principles of your psycho-spiritual work into practical application in a
Hmm.
situation which is right up front and around you. I love that. It's an
Yeah.
inspiring, yeah, that we could all do that in some way, and also not giving up. Um,
Hmm.
Another thing that comes to me when I was writing that chapter on Chiron, which we'll mention in the book soon, I was reading in Chongyam Trungpa about
Hmm.
the spiritual warrior, right? Shambhala and all that kind of stuff. And it's talking about Buddhism, and part of the Buddhist teaching is that at the foundation of every being, every human being, there's a basic goodness.
Hmm.
And so if we can remember that,
Yes.
that we get lost, there are influences, and who knows, they may be karmic, they may be from the
Right.
past and cycles, and we can become infected with a disease, but also those some of those negative ideas
Hmm.
and beliefs.
Hmm.
But it's not, it doesn't mean the patient is dead. It just
No.
means we're going through a difficult time. And
Yeah.
there's so many healing modalities, and there's so much information, Akashic records even,
Right.
coming to light. So there's a real quickening afoot of consciousness, people awakening to a spiritual path, becoming
Hmm.
true seekers or aspirants, and looking for ways to apply that. So there's a lot of reason for hope. So I love that. Allow the grieving, create the space, honor it, give it time, and at the same time say, yeah, but we've been doing a lot of good things in this world and we still can,
Yep.
especially if we work together, solidarity.
Hmm. Hmm.
Okay, so Rainbow Bridge, even the name is beautiful, isn't it? Inspiring.
Hmm.
And I remember one thing that I did take a course with Chloe,
Hmm.
and the idea that there are threads, as you said yourself, it's very skimpy at first, right? Just barely connected.
Yes.
The soul and the threefold personality, but there is always a connection. But then through our intention and meditation and techniques, we start to clean out and then make it more substantial. But that there are different threads
Yes.
so that we kind of weave, and as those threads increase in number and resilience, then it becomes more like a Jacob's ladder. Maybe
Yeah. Yeah.
the
Hmm.
lower energies can climb up and the heaven energies can come down. So Rainbow Bridge. What about astrology and
Hmm.
Chiron and the Centaurs, maybe, which is a specialty of yours, not the
Hmm.
only factor, but what would you say? You could just maybe tell people what you offer and how you work with people. That could be.
Yeah. So the centaurs in astrology have been a particular interest of mine for a number of years since I became an astrologer in 2017. Um, and I don't even know how it started. I think I watched a workshop or a lecture on Chiron, and then I, kind of began reading and Googling and thinking. And I met David Leskowitz, who is my centaur business partner. And David is a Buddhist and a psychic, an astrologer. He practices astral magic and other uh, astrological techniques. Um, and I found his website, met him, and he invited me to this kind of meditation ceremony with the centaurs, where we talk about the centaurs and astrology and have some prayers and meditation and ceremony. And that was kind of, a life-changing experience for me. I realized that these centaur asteroids or minor planets weren't just, kind of space rocks or things out there, but were connected to deities or helper spirits, you might say.
Yeah. Could
And
you
so,
just, a lot of people may not even know what a centaur is. Could you just briefly?
yes, sorry. So a
Okay.
centaur is a half man and half horse we know them primarily from Greek mythology, but they were part of other cultures' mythology, Tibetan mythology and Indian mythology and other cultures where the horse was prominent. And so they also talk about, as you mentioned, bridging our lower and higher natures. And For me, I find the centaurs, whether you're talking about astrology or meditating with them, receiving their energy, they are trauma healers and they heal the places in us where we separated either from ourselves or from the earth or from the divine as a result of some, traumatic injury, whether that was relational or physical or spiritual or something else.
Mhm.
And so each one of the centaurs that we work with in astrology and in our meditation practice is there to address a certain vibrational band
Yeah.
of of pain. And they're not just, wounded healers or they're not just totally focused on the pain, but they help us to become aware in a compassionate way of the pain that prevents us from continuing to move on our own personal spiritual journey and growth. And so my work with the centaurs is really multifaceted. It's, working with a client's charts, writing and publishing, and then also doing these meditative sessions, or we call them attunements. And for those attunements, you can go to our website, which is centaurhealing.earth, and sign up for our email list. We offer attunements in kind of a graded level, like in terms of receiving more and more energy over a series of levels. And those meditations are always offered on Thursdays
Mm.
at 3:30 Eastern. And we've
Right.
been doing it that way for years,
That's
something like 6 or 7 years at this
wow.
point.
That's a
Hmm.
lot of continuity. So just to let people know also that the centaurs, as well as being characters in Greek mythology, Chiron being the most famous one, who was the master physician, uh, but they are actually bodies in our solar system. So there's the scientific aspect, astronomical aspect of their orbits and all the different qualities of their orbits originally informed to astrologers
Hmm.
many of the characteristics because they have very irregular elliptical orbits which
Right.
cross over the orbits of the major planets such as Saturn and
Hmm.
Uranus and so on. So that's where that idea comes from in as above, so below, right? That
Hmm.
there's a kind of unusualness and connecting of different worlds, the inner solar system and the outer solar system, for example, the personal and the
Yes.
public,
Hmm.
any kind of duality really that we can get so stuck upon.
Yes.
The centaurs help to show the way, the bridge, I suppose, to transcend the duality and go towards a unity, which is really the in this age, what's happening is a
Hmm.
breaking down of the dualistic past and being able to see the unity in everything. So now the book, which
Hmm.
is about to come out any month, any week,
Yes.
any week,
Yes.
any
Any
month.
week now.
It's been
Yeah.
a long time churning.
Yes.
Could you
Yeah.
tell
So the
people?
book is called Sideways from Saturn,
Right.
and it's edited by myself and David Leskowitz with support from Melanie Reinhardt, who is a well-known astrologer, one of the first astrologers to really bring the centaurs into our consciousness. And she's been a great pioneer for many of us. So we gathered together a number of astrologers. I think it's 12. We've got 12 pieces, if not 12 astrologers, to write about one of these Centaur minor planets and talk about some aspect of it, and including Hugh, who is writing about his relationship to Chiron. And I'm sure many of your viewers, listeners know about your work with Chiron.
Not yet. Not on
Not yet?
Not on Substack at least
Not in
though.
Substack. Okay.
Not much anyway.
Right.
But
And
yeah.
so it for us it was well, I guess I'll speak just personally. For me, it was a way to write about some of these lesser known Centaur planets, Centaur asteroids. I wrote about Nessus and Asbolus, which are not very well known, and to start the process of bringing that out into astrological literature, into our kind of collective consciousness as astrologers, and hopefully make a contribution to more and more people looking at them in charts.
So again, you're kind of playing that role of a connector yourself, a bridge, between Greek mythology and modern Greek literature and healing and political, economic, with the spiritual principles and it's beautiful. So more and more it seems that there's your own rainbow bridge, your relationship with the world as well as your
Yes.
own soul and higher self and so on. But the bridge, the horizontal bridge, you might say,
Yep.
is strengthening and the threads are multiplying as you find ways to express your purpose in this world in practical ways.
Yes, and I think that's really why my records kept telling me, as I was on the verge of starting this new identity in the world as a spiritual coach, why they kept telling me I needed to do the Rainbow Bridge in order to strengthen those soul threads and bring more of my soul's energy down and out into the world.
Well, I had a couple of sessions with you, and I have to share with people that I really enjoyed them, and I really appreciated your presence
Hmm.
and your kind of quietness and humility in a way, sort of like a matter of fact, but at the same time, not bombastic the way some people
Mhm.
are, but really being in the moment. And I could see you. We had our session on Zoom, just like right now, but
Mhm.
I could witness you going inside and checking things out and being careful to find the right words to express what may not be that easy to express in language. So I felt that there's a real authenticity in your art, in your practice.
Yeah, thank you, Hugh. Thank
I'd
you for.
recommend you. So, and we'll put, you can let me know after exactly which links you'd like me to put underneath the video.
Sure.
Could be your website or maybe the session that you do with David or whatever.
Hmm. Hmm.
And so, well, thanks very much. We could go on, I'm sure. And maybe in the future, you'll come back again.
I would love that, Hugh.
Would you?
This was a
Okay.
wonderful conversation. I enjoyed
Yeah.
it so much.
Yeah, very fertile. No,
Hmm.
juicy. Yeah.
Hmm.
Thanks a lot, Jenny.
You're welcome. Thank
Okay.
you.
Bye for now.
Bye.